Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Pantydeal Podcast. I am your host for this week. My name is Dragon Lady, and if you missed last episode 1, then you may not know that I have been selling panties on Pantydeal for about 6 months now. And I'm delighted to be hosting some podcasts for Pantydeal because I'm really passionate about all things panty selling and I've just got so much to share with you. So if you missed the first episode, then please do check it out. That was all about getting started on Pantydeal. So especially if you are new to the site, if you're a new seller, then you really want to check that out because that was essentially a step-by-step guide to getting started panty selling. So, what are we talking about this week? Well, this week is a nice natural move on from that, and it's all about what does it take to be a successful panty seller. So, you've gone through step by step, you've set up your profile, you're ready to go, but what does it really take to be successful? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, before we begin, I think it's worthwhile mentioning that success means different things to different people. But obviously, for the purposes of this podcast, we're talking about making sales, okay? We're talking about creating relationships with customers, building connections with potential customers, and, providing a good service to the buyers who are on the site. That's what success means to me. It may mean something different to you, but I know by the time we've gone through everything we have to talk about today, that you're going to have a really firm grasp of what you need to do in order to make this work for you. And that's what this podcast is all about. So let's get started, shall we? So you've set up your profile, you've set up your shop, you've got all your pictures and you're ready to go. What next? What does it take to be successful in this work? So the important thing to mention here is that everybody's background is different, okay? So everyone is coming into this work from a different approach, okay? Perhaps you have some experience in sales, whether that's in real life in a shop or whether that's online, or perhaps you have absolutely no experience in sales whatsoever and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and possibly even daunted. But the truth is, I know plenty of sellers who have come into this line of work and they've had no experience in sales whatsoever, and they've still managed to make it work for them, okay? So please don't be put off if you think, I've never sold online before, I'm not really sure how it works. It's easy. Once you get started, you will learn a lot very, very quickly. And that's been my experience and the experience of lots of other sellers that I've spoken to. So, just take it in your stride, follow these guidelines, and you'll begin selling with confidence and ease soon enough, okay? So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. For me personally, it was really obvious what I had to do when I first joined Pantydeal. So the first thing that I had to do was just take a look and see what other sellers were doing, because I'm a firm believer in the well-known sort of saying, if you like, that if you want to become really good or really successful in any field of work, right, doesn't matter what it is, then the best thing to do is to look at the people who are doing really well in that field or enterprise or whatever it is and emulate them, So that's exactly what I did with regards to panty selling. I was looking at who are the successful panty sellers here. So who are the sellers that have, a huge number of reviews, for example, or they've been on the site for quite a while, or it's just obvious to me when I look at the overview page, for example, that those are big players, if you like, right? And I don't mean to say that in a way that is daunting to you, but just obviously these sellers are doing something right. What is it that they're doing? How are they doing it? And how can I bring that into my own work? Do you see what I mean? It's not about copying other people per se, but it's about certainly emulating their behaviors. And that's the first thing that I did. So I was looking at, how are they showing up and what's their mindset likely to be and what are their beliefs, right? So if you want to be the best, you have to emulate the best. And that was the first port of call for me. So I paid particular attention to what the biggest or the most successful sellers were doing so that I could incorporate that into what I was doing. And that's exactly what I'm going to share with you now, because not only from looking at them and, learning from them, but also from doing this for 6 months now. And I know that doesn't sound like a huge amount of time, but believe me when I say that the learning curve, especially in the early days, was absolutely massive for me. And I learned so much. And I feel that I have quite a good amount of experience now, having made, well over 100 sales. Like, I don't even know how many now, that I can talk to you about this and I can teach you about the things that I've learned from them and that I've learned for myself, okay? So the first most important thing is you need to be you, okay? Now that sounds really weird when I say it, but you would be surprised how many sellers join the site and then think that they have to be a certain way in order to make sales. Now, of course, there may be an element of truth in that, but the most important thing to remember is that people buy from people. So I have a little bit of a sales background, online sales. So I got to learn this, that, ultimately when people buy from people, it's because they connect with them in some way, right? That they resonate with their beliefs or with, how they live their life or whatever it may be, okay? And it looks like I'm going off on tangent here, but stay with me. So when you are yourself, when you convey certain elements of your personality through your profile or through your postings or whatever, people can connect with that. Now, that doesn't mean that you will appeal to every single person that looks at your stuff, but it certainly means that if you are just showing up and being you, first of all, that's a really easy thing to do because you don't have to pretend and you don't have to fake it, because it's really hard to keep up a pretense in any area of life. But, especially if you can just show up and be you and have your personality shine through, that's easy work, right? You don't have to pretend, you don't have to try. But also, it will just appeal to certain individuals who are just really refreshed by a different personality or you being unique, because we're all uniquely different. And many buyers, they want to get to know you a little bit better before they make a purchase from you, because that's the appeal. When buyers are on the site, they're looking for sellers that they can connect with. And especially when it comes to panty selling, that's a very intimate purchase. And so the person will want to get to know you, okay? When I say the real you, of course I mean the real you, but that doesn't mean you have to divulge every single element of your life, right? Nobody's saying that. Of course, keep an air of mystery and intrigue, but don't be afraid to allow you to come through in what you're doing. That's what I'm trying to say here, okay? So, a lot of sellers that I've spoken to have said that they're almost afraid to be too much of themselves in case it puts people off. And that's not been my experience personally. Of course, you can tailor it and test it and see how it works for you. But for me, the more I was just myself, the more sales that I made, because nobody else on the site can be me, right? Only I can be me. And that's unique and that's refreshing and that's appealing and that's magnetic and that's attractive. So those are the kinds of things that I would encourage you to just play around with, okay? Like I said, you don't have to come on and be the same way that you would necessarily be on a social media profile, but it's kind of similar, okay? You want to convey a certain element of you and your personality and what you're about. And of course, your profile description is a really excellent place to do that. But also, it can filter through all of your posts, through all of your shop adverts, through all of your postings, okay? So just bear that in mind. That's the first thing. But like I said, it's important that you feel comfortable with who you are and how you're coming across, okay? So I'm not encouraging you to do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, but certainly don't be afraid to be you, because that is unique and that is a good thing to be, okay? And when we're trying to pretend to be something we're not, that's exhausting and it's very difficult to keep up long term. So with that in mind, a really good exercise is to take some time out and maybe take a pen and paper and write out what is it that makes you different, okay? How can you stand out from all the other sellers that are on the site? What is unique about you? Because that is ultimately your unique selling point, okay? So it pays to use your best strengths and utilize them to build your business, okay? So just think about it this way. If all sellers on Pantydeal were the same, how would anybody stand out, right? It would be very boring. And obviously all of the buyers that are on the site are different and they have different needs and requirements and desires. And so if we were all the same, how could we, tailor ourselves to that? It would be very difficult. So it's a good thing to be different. It's a good thing to stand out for something unique that is not the same across all the board, okay? So what is it that you can do that's different, and why should buyers consider buying from you? Now, I'm not saying that's an easy exercise. Sometimes it's really difficult to sit down and think about, well, what is it about me that makes me different? So, again, you can take a look at other sellers and what's going on in the site, and then you can begin to see some ways that you're different from other sellers, okay? So, it could even be something as pretty normal as MILF, right? Okay, so not all sellers are MILF. If you're a MILF, then for sure put that on your profile, because that is something that certain buyers are looking for, right? Or perhaps you are curvier in, an area of your body, or just overall. Again, that is something that not all sellers are, so that's unique to you. I'm not saying that you're the only curvy person, of course not, but it's about honing in on all of the different things that make you unique, okay? So, maybe, like for myself, over 40. That's unique. There aren't many sellers over 40, for example. So I could put that. There's lots of different things that you may think, oh, well, I'm not going to mention that because that's maybe not the same as everyone else. But actually, that's a good thing, okay? So I hope I'm getting this across, that it's really important to think about your brand. And I know that sounds like a really, what are you talking about? Like, this is just a panty selling business, but you have a brand as well. You are your brand. And if you were to go and sell online in any shape or form, that would be the first thing that you looked at, would be your brand. What is my brand? And that is you in this case, right? You are your brand. So what does that look like? How are you different? How are you going to stand out? And how is that going to come across in your business? Okay, so don't be overwhelmed by any of that. It's just a case of sitting down and going, what makes me different, and how can I incorporate that into my profile description, into what I offer and all of my services, okay? It's even possible that you could offer something that other sellers aren't offering. I have, tried lots of different approaches over the months, and not everything has stuck, not everything has been successful, but it's worth trying and just playing around with it, okay? And just seeing, because you may be surprised that an idea that you have for something to sell, all of a sudden it's not out there, it's not, being sold by anyone else, and it's a massive success and loads of people want it. And that's just, part of the work, and it's exciting, and it's what makes it a really interesting creative outlet to be able to come up with some of these interesting ideas. And I think before we move on to the next part, I just want to finish by saying that by far the most important aspect is that you have fun with it, okay? What I've found is the more fun I'm having selling, the more sales I make. And that is the God's honest truth, okay? Whenever I'm just being playful and, having fun with it, it tends to attract more buyers. That's just the bottom line. So have a play around. And I'll tell you something else that you should maybe consider is Pantydeal run contests. I'm going to say feels like every 4 to 6 weeks. I can't remember what their schedule is, but it's worthwhile entering one of the contests because it's good fun and it's a really good opportunity for you to be super creative because they give you a theme, but it's up to you. You can go off and create anything within that theme. And it's a really interesting way of raising your profile and again, allowing your personality to come through. So if you look at some of the entries from the last contest, you will see that, I'm not sure if the winner's been announced yet, but certainly the most popular voted entries are the ones where there's a little bit of fun and a little bit of creativity in there as well. So That's something to keep in mind. But let's move on to the next thing. So what makes a successful panty seller? Well, we've talked about being you, and now we're moving on to showing up. What does that mean? Well, it goes without saying that if you want to be successful as a panty seller on Pantydeal, clearly you have to log into the site, okay? Now, of course, one of the advantages of doing this work is that you are able to fit it around anything that's going on in your life. So perhaps you already have a full-time job or a couple of part-time jobs, or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. And what's great about this is that you can more or less tailor the hours that you do around your existing commitments. However, as with any online business, the more you put in, the more you're going to get back, okay? So the more time you invest in panty selling, the more profitable it'll be, the more sales you'll make. And that's just a no-brainer, okay? So most successful sellers are going to log into the site on a daily basis in order to connect with buyers and to post their items. And the other thing to mention here, which I think is really important, is depending on where you are in the world, and remember, of course, that Pantydeal is a global market, okay? It's everywhere, it's every country. So you're, Australia, New Zealand, all of Europe, America, everywhere. So there will be times for you, depending on which country you're in, that there are maybe more busy times of the day or the week or whatever. And those are ideally the times that you would want to log in and connect with people. But if that's not possible for you, then of course, just log in at times that are available for you. But do make sure that you are showing up. There's no point creating a profile and going to all of that effort and energy to make your shop and everything if you're not going to log into the site on a regular basis. So, that goes without saying. But the good news is that because it is a global market, you can find buyers online at any time of the day, really. That's the good thing about it. Now, of course, you don't have to be on the site 24/7. Nobody's suggesting that. But just commit to whatever time of the day it is that you have to go online. Then commit to it and show up and make the time and the effort, to go on and do that. So for me, I'm very fortunate that I can log on at all different times during the day. So for me, as soon as I get up, I log on, I, check messages and make contact or whatever. And then I'll maybe leave it a few hours and then I'll log in again. And then again later on in the afternoon, and then before I go to bed. But that's just me personally. That's always been my situation. But if you are in a 9-to-5 job, it's obviously a little bit more difficult for you. You may find that it's easier for you before work or after work or whatever. But certainly, like I said, the most important thing is that you take time to actually log in and make contact with people at whatever point of day is best for you. Which leads us on to the next part of what it takes to be a successful panty seller. And that is tenacity. Okay, so yes, selling panties online is easy. It couldn't be easier. You've got everything set up for you. You've got access to thousands and thousands of buyers across the world, as we've already discussed. But that doesn't mean that all you have to do is set up a profile and then sit back and wait for the sales to come in. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So for me, I was instantly hooked when I joined Pantydeal because I did make sales, I think, on my second day. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's across the board for everybody, but I got to see how simple it was if I put the work in. And the work is showing up, as we've already discussed, but also taking some effort and energy into actually building trust and confidence with buyers and communicating with potential customers. Now, this is huge, so I really want you to pay attention here, okay? It's tempting to think that, oh, okay, all I have to do is set up my profile and then occasionally post an overview and that's it. Like, of course, that will work to an extent, but there's much more to it than that. And that's why the site has lots of different functions and capability for you to make the most of it in order to make the sales, okay? So it's really common for new sellers to come on the site and maybe not be so familiar with that or the options that are available, and therefore fall at the first hurdle, okay? Because they go, oh, well, hang on, this is a little bit maybe more work than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, I'm just not cut out for it. But please don't think that, because if you are willing to put in some time and energy, this can be extremely lucrative for you. So it's important not to, like I said, fall at the first hurdle and just give up too easily. And it's about being realistic. You know, if you come into the work and your belief is that all you have to do is set up a profile and then not do very much after that and make money, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you have a more realistic expectation that you show up and there will be a number of hours of work where you're connecting with buyers and essentially selling yourself, then you won't be disappointed, because that's, you know, the name of the game, really. So it's just about understanding that, yes, this is easy. Yes, the site has made things very easy for women to sell their underwear. But also, yes, you will be required to show up and put some effort, at least, into communicating with potential buyers and simply, you know, showing up and posting, and like I said, building trust and confidence. Because if you're logging in every day to post, then what you're doing is you're sending the message to buyers that you are a legitimate seller, that you are here for the long term, that you are not some fly by night, that you're ready to stick it out. And that can be hard sometimes, especially if you haven't made a sale. You may feel demotivated, but certainly if you continue to show up, if you're persistent, if you're consistent, then the sales will start to come. And that's the advice that I've always given to other sellers, that if you fall at the first hurdle, that's such a shame, because you may have just been on the edge of that first sale, but you've given up too easily, okay? So it's not, you know, nobody's saying you have to slog away, like I said, 24/7. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is that just be consistent and show up and make the effort, and you will reap the rewards for that. Which leads us very nicely onto our next aspect of what makes a successful panty seller, and that is spending your time wisely. So what do I mean by that? Well, successful panty sellers spend their time effectively, okay? Whatever time you do have to commit to this work, it makes sense that you utilize that time in the best possible way, okay? So you'll discover, as we've said, quite quickly, that it's just not enough to post on overview over and over and over again at whatever time of day and then have all the sales rolling in. Like I said, that approach will work to a certain extent for a few sales here and there. But the most successful panty sellers know that in order to make sales, they need to reach out to customers, but also to make use of every aspect of Pantydeal that is available to them, okay? So I'm going to talk you through the different ways that you can do this on Pantydeal, okay? You may be quite surprised by some of the approaches that you can use and some of the facilities and the functionality, rather, that you can utilize on the site. So the first thing is, obviously, you can send buyers a friend request, okay? So take time, first of all, it goes without saying, to read the buyer's profile, to get to know whether you have something that they're interested in. And this leads back to what we were talking about earlier. If there are buyers who are interested in mature sellers like myself, or interested in MILFs, or interested in, curvier women or whatever, then a lot of buyers will write that in their profile. Now, if you take time to read the profile, first of all, then you'll know whether it's worthwhile sending a friend request to that person. Now, it's not to say that you can't still be friends with them even if you're not able to supply something that they're specifically looking for, but it just doesn't hurt to have a read of the buyer's profile just to see whether there's a match there, okay? Because if there is, then that's a really good conversation starter as well. So send the buyer a friend request, but obviously read the profile first. Secondly, you can send a sticker. So you may or may not be familiar with the sticker system on Pantydeal, but certainly it's a really easy, fun way to, introduce yourself to a buyer. Okay, there's lots of different stickers that you can choose from, and most of the time you'll receive one back, which is really nice as well. And then again, that's a useful conversation starter. So certainly you can send a sticker or a friend request. Thirdly, you can send them a message. So that seems really obvious, but many sellers aren't really utilizing it to its full extent. Now, if you want to get to know someone a little better, of course, send them a message. However, please keep in mind that the majority of buyers, and I'd go as far as to say 99.9% of them, do not appreciate a cold message from a seller just asking them to buy from them. That really is a bit of a no-no. So please refrain from doing that as much as possible, because it can be a turn off for many buyers. Now, maybe there are the odd one or two out there who are quite comfortable with that, and perhaps if you're a seller listening to this, you may be disagreeing with me and think, well, actually that strategy's worked for me, and that's great. I'm just going on the feedback that I've had from buyers I've spoken to. Every single one has said that they do not appreciate that kind of approach. It's not something that we enjoy as, human beings, as sellers ourselves. If you got a phone call and it's a company wanting to sell you something, we don't like it. It's just not a fun approach. And especially if we want to keep a community vibe and all that kind of thing on Pantydeal, then ideally we just want to strike up conversations with buyers and with sellers. It works both ways. So, bear in mind that cold messaging and asking people to buy isn't ideal, but certainly sending a message to introduce yourself or maybe to talk about something on their profile, then that's cool. That's what the message system exists for. It's there for us to use it. So please do not be shy or feel like you're bothering people if you message them. It's just a friendly thing to do. And the fact that the system is there means that we should use it. That's my approach anyway. The next thing you can do is you can welcome new buyers. So you may notice on the overview page that it will inform you of somebody who's just joined the site, whether that's a seller or a buyer, and by all means reach out to both. But it's a nice thing to do to just welcome someone to the site and create that really good first impression with them. Alternatively, you can visit the profile of people who have visited your profile. So again, this is something that you'll see on the Pantydeal website, that it will show you the people who visited your profile. And certainly if they've had a look at your profile, the chances are there's something there that they like. And so why not reach out to them and say hello, or even thank them for looking at your profile. So I hope that's given you a bit of an idea that there's far much more to do on Pantydeal than simply join, set up your profile, and then continue to post on overview. I mean, the overview page is good, and by all means you should post on that and even initiate conversation here and there. I don't see any problem with that. But if you are going to be a successful panty seller, coming back to the point, then you want to utilize whatever time you have to your advantage, okay? So if you only had 20 minutes to spare, is it worthwhile spending 20 minutes simply posting on overview, or is it worthwhile spending 20 minutes utilizing all of the different things that I've mentioned there, and therefore spreading your reach, reaching out to more people and potentially making more sales? Okay, so that's why I want to hammer home here. There's loads of options available on the site to connect with potential customers. So overview is just one of them, okay? But take your time, explore the site, see how you can best use it to make contact with customers. And of course, only do the things that you're comfortable with. If you feel that you're too shy to send messages to buyers, then of course, don't force yourself. But really, for me, the most success that I've had is when I've really just spent the time building relationships and engaging with customers. That doesn't mean that every single person that I message has bought from me, of course not. But I have actually made some really good friends and some really good connections just by utilizing some of those approaches, okay? So like I said, if you can't devote a lot of time to selling due to other commitments you have in your life, then it makes sense to just make the best use of the time that you do have. And one mistake, and I think it's potentially just procrastination, is to, for example, spend a lot of time creating pretty graphics and adverts. And of course, take time and do that, and it's important and it's fun. But don't think that just because you're spending a lot of time doing that, that is you working, or that is going to lead to as many sales as, actually using the site properly would do. Does that make sense? Okay, so you can spend half an hour making a graphic look really pretty, or you can spend half an hour messaging customers, and that will be a much better return on investment time-wise, okay? So moving on, the next, what it takes to be a successful panty seller is related to having confidence in yourself. So we've already touched on this a little bit, but like I said, it's really common to feel overwhelmed and a little bit daunted when you first join Pantydeal. And some sellers liken it to being the new girl at school, okay? That's certainly how I felt. So I'm sure everybody can relate to that. We've all felt that kind of new feeling, okay? And particularly if you're new to selling, like I said, not everybody that comes onto Pantydeal has experience selling online or selling in general, so it can feel pretty new, shall we say. But what I want to just share with you is that everybody started exactly where you are now. If you're feeling that way, everybody has felt that way too, and I know I did. So the truth is, we all have to begin somewhere, okay? And try not to be put off if you're new and think, oh my goodness, there's so much to it, I can't do it, okay? If I can do it, you can do it, okay? Have faith in yourself, have confidence. You just have to remind yourself, and sometimes this is a daily thing, and sometimes I have to do it too, that we have what it takes just as much as every other seller on the site, okay? So even sellers who've been selling for a really long time, they still have days where they doubt themselves, okay? Because that's human and that's normal. So for that reason, it's a really good idea to connect with other sellers. Like, you're joining a community here, and most sellers really just want you to feel involved and welcome, and nobody likes to see anybody struggle. So we're all here to help each other out. And the good news is that when you're making friends on Pantydeal, you can make friends with sellers as well as buyers, okay? So, introduce yourself, get to know other sellers, make new friends, and, not everybody has a lot of time to socialize on the site. Of course, it's not a social media platform per se, but there are certainly sellers there who want to see you succeed as much as they want themselves to succeed. It is a really friendly community overall. So just the most important thing here is for you to feel that you're worthy, okay? And it sounds a little bit crazy that I'm even talking about that, but a common belief amongst new sellers in particular is that, well, I'm new to this, I'm not as good as all the other big sellers here, so I should just come in and sell things at a really low price because I'm not good enough, essentially. And I understand that feeling, and I felt the same way, and I know a lot of sellers do, but the truth is that we're all here and we're all in the same boat and we're all providing the same service. So don't feel like you're not good enough to sell at whatever price. Have a look and see what is the going price for panties on Pantydeal, and I should be able to slot in quite nicely with that because I'm just as worthy of being here as everybody else. And that is the general feeling amongst sellers. Nobody wants you to feel that you have to join and essentially price yourself way low in order to prove yourself. Does that make sense? I mean, that's a big deal, and I know that comes up for a lot of people, so I wanted to mention it for sure. And lastly, the last thing we're going to talk about with regards to what makes a successful panty seller is picking yourself up and dusting yourself off. So what does that mean? It means that we all have quiet days or even weeks, and especially if you're a new seller and it's maybe taking a bit of time to make that first sale, it's not uncommon to feel a little bit down or that you're not doing it right. But the truth is, there are busier times and there are quieter times, and that goes for the week, the month, or even the year. So for just now, it's holiday time, and you may find that it's a little quieter. So it's important not to be despondent on those days or to think that you just don't have it in you. The truth is, if you're experiencing a lull in sales for whatever reason, then it's a really great opportunity to update your shop or take new pictures, and just don't let it throw you off your long-term vision of selling panties, because all sellers have up days and down days, but the successful panty sellers know that when it goes down, the only way it can go is up, okay? So you just have to be able to like I said, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, keep going, don't give up, okay? That's the most important thing. And also, and this is an important one, sales that don't go through. So it may be that you've spoken to somebody and unfortunately for whatever reason, it hasn't resulted in a sale. So again, dust yourself off, get going, get back on the horse, okay? Do not let a lost sale or a negative experience get to you, okay? This is just part of the job. Not every single person that you speak to will result in a sale, and perhaps you feel frustrated or disappointed, but if you're going to be successful in this work, you have to be able to get over that really quickly and just move on to the next sale. And look at it this way, every sales experience that you have is a learning experience, okay? The more people you interact with, the better you get at selling. And I can hand on heart say that's the truth for me. I have spoken to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buyers. And of course, not every single experience or interaction has resulted in sales. But from just learning, from talking to lots of different people, that has made my selling much better. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So it's important not to let things get to you. And again, this is why I mentioned earlier that having other sellers that you connect with on Pantydeal is really important because you can support each other and we're a community and we're there to do that. So the last thing that I'm going to mention here is a professional approach. Okay, so this is the ultimate when it comes to any business, really, is that you offer a really good customer service experience. And if you want to be taken seriously as a seller, it's important that you put effort and professionalism into your work. So again, and this is what we talked about last week in the last podcast, we were talking about having your pictures well taken and making sure that your shop items are well written, but it goes beyond that. It's about when you engage with customers that you're professional and courteous and friendly, and that works both ways. You know, that's what we expect and that's what we give out. So offer a good level of customer service because first impressions are important, and even if somebody doesn't necessarily buy from you right now, they won't forget that they had that great experience with you, and when it comes to buying again, you will be their first port of call. That's been my experience anyway. So again, think long term. If this person isn't for you right now, perhaps he will buy from you later. So make sure that all of your interactions are as professional and as friendly and courteous as you could possibly make them. And offer a great buying experience. So I think this is something we'll talk about in a later podcast. In fact, I know we will because it's really important. But just going above and beyond and offering that extra mile, if you like. So I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. I think it would pay to just go over again what we talked about in terms of what it takes to be a successful panty seller. So the first thing that I said was to be you, to allow your personality to shine through your work and not be afraid to inject a little bit of what makes you unique and what makes you different into your work. Secondly, we talked about showing up. So that's, it goes without saying, you have to log into the site. You have to, at least take the time and the effort to put in the work if you want to reap the rewards. And so we also mentioned about tenacity and just not giving up at the first hurdle or at the first sign of a little bit more work than you possibly expected, and just having realistic expectations around the amount of work you will have to put in. The next thing that we talked about was spending your time wisely. So whatever time you have available to spend on the site, just utilising the different options that are available for you with regards to reaching out to customers. Then we talked about having confidence in yourself and just remembering, of course, that you are just as worthy as any other seller. And even though you feel overwhelmed or daunted, that, we've all been in that boat and we all learn very quickly and you'll feel confident really soon. And then we talked about picking yourself up and dusting yourself off whenever something maybe doesn't go the way you wanted it to, or it's a quiet time for sales, whatever it may be for you. Just not giving up and keep going because it's worth it long term. And then we talked about having that professional approach and how that's what most buyers will expect from sellers, because this is a business, this is your business, and you have to remember that and act accordingly. Okay, so that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye-bye.